concert movement number 1. The basic head bob. Ready, go.
Hello there. Bradshaw with you here on a Friday afternoon. We survive.
It's time to start.
All right, 244-0077. The email address, radiobradshaw@gmail.com, and follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/radiobradshaw. For almost all of your Bradshaw needs, just go to the website, www.thebradshawshow.com. For those of you who have been, we are living through Night of the Comet right now. As, what is it? DA-14? Yeah. It is an asteroid, and it is passing closer, like literally as we speak, it is passing closer to the Earth than geosynchronous satellites. It will miss us approximately by about 15 minutes. I mean, if you think about the grand scale of the universe, the space, and I know humans, because things both, incredibly large and incredibly small, don't feed us, shelter us, or at least in a everyday survival sense, threaten us. We really aren't good mentally at how small is a proton, how large is the sun, the space between galaxies and the like. It's not something that we evolved, because it wasn't, until very recently, in our development, that we were even aware of such things as, microbes or other galaxies. Back in our old hunter-gatherer days, again, knowing anything about the universe didn't help you eat. So I think math is not a natural thought for our brain. All right. Blame your ancestors' need to eat and find shelter in that. So I don't know how people quite grasp exactly what's going on out there. If you missed it, don't worry. You might want to start taking your vitamins and maybe jogging a little, because it'll be back in 2080 with a chance to actually hit us. One of the things that happens, it will pass so close to Earth that, thanks to our gravity, it's only a theory, Louisiana Public Schools.
I think it's funny you think that something missing us by 15 minutes, by that small, could have happened accidentally.
Well, ask the dinosaurs.
But it's just a theory. I don't know.
Gravity
before I talk to a dinosaur, I got to grab my freaking saddle. And you know how heavy a dinosaur saddle is?
I would have to visit the Creation Museum.
Yeah, well, the saddle thing's hilarious to me.
Well, it's the only way, other than to play. Remember Carl Everett? He was a Major League Baseball player, so I didn't believe in dinosaurs.
Oh, I don't.
Which
I
is
don't
funny
believe in
because
Carl
as a fantasy baseball player, I never believed in Carl Everett, and I actually had Bill Pecota on my roster for a short time back in the day. So my standards were very, very low when it came to that. But again, we know these things hit us. Last night, over the Ural Mountains, a much smaller asteroid entered the Earth's atmosphere, exploded over an area of Russia, about 1,000 kilometers, give or take, from Moscow. And I think by now everyone's seen the video of this thing streaking through the sky and exploding. Now, the good news is, and again, we're going to go through things that the brain is not good at. For any given square kilometer of the Earth, you're looking at some sort of meteorite impact once every, tens of thousands of years. That's the good news. The bad news is we have many square kilometers of Earth. More good news, approximately 70% of that is covered with water, so they just land harmlessly in the ocean. And most are just, small rocks, little pea size, hail, much like the USS Defiant, right? And it's a blade of armor. It loses mass as it comes through there. Entering the atmosphere at a high rate of speed is a generally hazardous event, as we've learned all too sadly. It loses a lot of mass. But these larger ones, like we saw in Russia last night, explode above the ground. Again, these are concepts that we have taken and used. What's wrong with my head? It's falling! Doc! I believe, has Dan been taken up by the hail bop?
Oh, I blame that on some random act of the universe.
You're not random.
Oh,
You're
clearly,
right there.
It just all happened. Just randomly.
I know, you 6,000-year-old Earthers.
I'm not a 6,000-year-old Earther.
10,000-year-old
I'm not a
Earther.
10,000-year-old Earther. I would say I have no idea the actual age of the Earth because I don't think the Bible, the language of Hebrew in which it was written in the story, in the creation story, I think it's rather ambiguous. And so God created the Earth and however He saw fit.
The writers of the Bible had no idea of that sort of. I mean, it wasn't something that entered their minds. It wasn't something that was, they were concerned about on a daily basis.
Yeah, I don't think the story for Genesis sets up for a 6,000-year timeline necessarily. I could see why somebody would come to that conclusion. I get it.
Well, they didn't use the book of Genesis for the 6,000-year-old Earth. They used the begat, and traced lifelines. That's where the 6,000-year-old
I understand how they formulated
the Earth came from.
But a lot of that happens in the Mosaic scriptures, which are like the first 4 books of the Bible, right? And that's where that timeline's built. There are some that will say there's a gap theory, which accounts for the age of the Earth. There are some that will say the gap theory is heresy. There's a framework theology, which would allow for evolution.
Yeah, everyone interprets it much like the rest of the Bible
actually,
in their own way.
All of those ways of interpreting it are fairly new. They didn't exist in the medieval church. They didn't exist in the first century church.
It wasn't until we started to come up with some idea that perhaps, again, long periods of time, human beings have a hard time rationalizing because that's not how our brains work.
So
we work at a very medium.
The only thing I insist on, Bradshaw, is that there was a literal Adam and that God purposefully and willfully created the earth. Because I can't explain the precision in which nature works without God. But there
are other people who will. So
I know,
we will pick up the slack for you.
But they get fun awards like the Crocoduck, where they're just making crap up, and so we just we mock things together and give them to them. I mean, in general, like Dr. Kent Hovind, who I'm friends with his son Eric, they're not looked at in a favorable light because they
are by some,
by a very small minority.
If their particular product,
by some, the Westboro Baptist Church is looked at in a proper light or in a positive light. But,
I call them Republicans.
But in
who have
general,
taken the Westboro Baptist Church and just put nicer language on it.
Yeah, well, in general, everybody hates the Westboro Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm. That's why they're even leaving. You see a couple of if you've ever watched Louis Theroux's documentary, The Most Hated Family in America, it's an interesting look at the Phelps clan. And I think his granddaughters, 2 of them, escaped and we use this term very loosely, church that is almost exclusively made up of Phelps members. But it's kind of exciting to be living through Night of the Comet. If you're like me and have a fondness for cheesy 80 movies, you know exactly what I'm talking about. On the flip side, Night of the Comet is the Earth passes through the tail of a comet. Everyone goes outside because they want to see, and it turns out something in the dust and debris trail alters human physiology, and they all have like 1 week to live. But the people who were necking in a movie projection booth and were cut off and weren't affected by the comet, turns out they're not going to die in a couple of weeks, and various nefarious forces like the U.S. government want to capture them and study them to see if this is a fixable condition. Spoiler alert, it's not, and you just end up with a bunch of, at the time, horny teenagers with Uzis in shopping malls hanging out in empty cities. It's a decent flick. I mean, it's not great. It's one of those just, if it was on TBS at 2 in the morning and I'm not drowsy, I'm going to sit and watch it. I don't know if it's on Netflix or not. But we're living through that. But again, we're not very good at like long-term thinking. Even pondering the existence of really, really, really long-term, eons. Part of that is just the dearth of science education in this country. Others have his earmuffs on, are intentionally getting in the way of scientific progress because it threatens their belief system. We know that these things hit us. We know they vary in size. What we probably should pay more attention to is the fact that there's really nothing we could do. We could throw up some best guesses. But our ability to, see these things, because last night's explosion over Russia caught everyone off guard. And, as the entirety of the media, ooh, special thing in the sky. Scary fact. This asteroid that is passing literally closer to the Earth than the satellite that brings you HBO was first discovered February 1st of 2012. By astronomers in Spain who probably needed to change their pantalones at that point. For the calculations to get showed, it was going to miss us, just by a hair. But there are hundreds of thousands of these things out there. This collection of stardust and debris that turned into our solar system. Again, wasn't complete thanks to the gravity of Jupiter. We have an asteroid field between Mars and Jupiter of it's a planet that wasn't meant to be. Outside of our solar system, there's all sorts of rocks and debris, and thanks to the sun's gravity, these things come towards us over the span of millions of years. We get hit. Again, luckily, most of them are tiny. Some are larger, like we saw over Russia. Some are very large and very dense because they're not all made of the same material. Some are just, rock and ice. Some are, iron. Just, toss a wrecking ball at the Earth and see what happens. Actually, you can see what happens. You can visit Arizona, where a rather large crater exists from one of those puppies. Maybe the one everyone talks about, at least recently, is the Tunguska event, which gives, as a Cub fan, gives me hope. Because the last large, space debris item to explode over Russia was 1908, the last time the Cubs won the World Series. In fact, it's pretty much a dead set lock. We're going to win it again this year. Thank you, Edwin Jackson. But that felled 80 million trees, basically took a chunk of land the size of Moscow, pretty big city, and just flattened it into nothing. it's such a rough ride through the atmosphere. These things explode. And as we learned, or at least as we put into application in the Manhattan Project, if you're going to drop a fat man or a little boy over a Japanese city, again, you don't let it hit the ground and explode. Right? Don't pound and explode. You want to blow up well above the city to maximize the damage, and that's what these asteroids do. But this DA 14, 130-ton space rock, half the size of a football field. Yeah, not a strong point of the species, but these things will hit us. Again, go ask a dinosaur. And it's not just, DA-14 would be a city killer. It would take out a London. It would take out, pretty much whatever it hits, it's going to destroy. Or maybe worse, land off the coast of Japan and give us another ginormous tsunami. But there are much bigger ones out there, and we're powerless to do anything at this point. And it's one of those arguments, how do you plan for, the probability over the next 10,000 years, AKA, as long as the, recorded history, longer than the recorded history. Is it something that we just kind of, well, if it happens, it happens? Or do we, do our damnedest to, let's figure out a way to deal with this? As far as technology goes, we are not even in our infancy. We harnessed the atom less than a century ago. But the ground, we've covered pales into the ground that is yet before us. But if there's, hope for us continuing as we see, it's going to come from science. And unfortunately, as we look to make Idiocracy a documentary, and again, whether it's cutting education or just the general anti intellectualism in our society. And how many times have you heard a multi-millionaire media star personality rail against the elites? I just hope sooner rather than later we shed that mentality, and hopefully, again, the folks teaching that the Loch Ness Monster disproves evolution don't cause any serious lasting damage. All right, 244-0077. You can email me, radiobradshaw@gmail.com, and on Twitter, twitter.com/radiobradshaw. Always interested in what people have to say. Always interested in feedback. When we come back, all sorts of stuff to still get to today. The what is the name of the carnival ship? The USS Libertopia, USS Somalia, USS Ron Paul, whatever. The Lord of the Flies, or I guess swap.avi, the Experience, is finally docked, and the horrors continue. And again, I am a travel fan. I'm even, to a degree, a cruise fan. Like, it's not necessarily for me. Too much time sitting, cabin, and the Lido deck has never had much appeal to me. Although all-you-can-eat shrimp, that's another story. Talk about that and the things that Kathy Lee Gifford is not going to tell you. In a commercial, we'll talk about that. And it looks like we may have a pretty decent idea of what gun legislation is going to get through. We'll talk about that and more when we return here on the Bradshaw Show, Webcast One Live. Thanks for watching. Back right after this.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative manager
I am the senior technician.
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So they're looking at the furnace, want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
It's time to start.
Rock concert music
Hi, there I am.
number
154 Bradshaw with you here. Friday afternoon in the capital city. We are inundated with high schoolers. It's getting worse. Getting around downtown is a bit of a interesting experience. And just a heads up, pay some extra attention the next couple of days around any, freeway, on-ramp, or anything like that, because we got a lot of out-of-towners who aren't used to these things. Also, just take care if you want to go to a shopping center, mostly Jordan Creek, or any sort of chain restaurant. You're going to be basically, if you show up anywhere and you see a bunch of shoe polish on windows, just go somewhere else. Everything will be back to normal next week. But in the meantime, yeah, oh my God. And I know it's good for the city. It's good for and yes, I absolutely admit. Part of this was the only state tournament I took part in was state baseball. And this was before they moved it to Sec Taylor, so we had to do it in Marshalltown, which I guess, geographically it makes sense, but it's not like it was a great facility or anything. Fort Dodge, by the way, had a far better, at least baseball field. Although as someone, again, who grew up hanging around, Sec Taylor, bugging the hell out of Laddie Renfro and Lance Dixon, I would have, harmed family members willfully and gleefully, not to run in the Olympics, but to get to play a game at Sec Taylor. So maybe it's a little bit of jealousy on my part, but man, they really need to issue some sort of, guide to getting around in Des Moines. Here's how to get around in interstate. It's insane. Yesterday's drive home was much better, though, than Thursday's. But apparently more kids are in. I think a lot of kids took school off today, and they're in town. That today's where things get a little scary. On I hope not a related note. Dan, you don't have like a filtered water thing at home, do you? You don't have like one of those.
Do I have a what?
Like a filtered water system. You just drink straight city tap water, right?
Heck no.
No?
No, that stuff tastes terrible.
I don't. I've never minded it until like in the last 2 days. It smells like it came right out of Hugh Hefner's hot tub.
Well, it's when the snow melts that all that contaminants from like the rotting leaves and stuff get in, and that flavor isn't something they can get out.
That's not the flavor. I know what you're talking about.
We get that one in the fall too.
It's almost like a tea, like a really bad herbal tea.
Yeah, it's like an earthy flavor
taste. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. This is like super chlorine chemically. Does anyone else? Am I the only one?
I don't know. I don't like tap water. I have a filter on my fridge, and I only drink from my fridge.
I've never had a problem with tap water. That which does not kill me. Blah blah, and plus having lived in other there are places with far worse tap water than we have. The folks, West Des Moines Waterworks do a wonderful job. But I don't. Is this a case of low water levels and they're having to use different sources or whatever it is? But it's just been in the last 2 or 3 days. It smells like a swimming pool. Going through there. It's really nasty. On the plus side, though, I think there's enough chlorine. I don't need to use any sort of scrubbing bubbles or anything. You can just spray the water, and it pretty much decontaminates everything. So I guess that's handy. We have that going for us, which is nice. I know it's probably not the most hard-hitting story of all time, but I have to admit I am absolutely fascinated with this Lord of the Flies cruise that Carnival is putting on. The Carnival Triumph, ironic name. One of the biggest sailing failure since the Achille Lauro. With my apologies to the Klinghoffer family. The engine room explodes. Apparently taking most of the systems down with this ship, including a lot of the electricity, a lot of the plumbing. It's basically turned into the poop cruise. Saw a picture last night. Convenient thing about vacation is that people show up with cameras and camcorders or record video on their phone. So we get almost, live battlefield coverage of this thing. They're setting out tent cities because basically the entirety of the inside of the ship is as anyone who's used a Kaibo in June or July, no, that is what the ship is smelled like, without the convenient blue fluid to kind of exit. But and I will say this again: I grew up. My mother is a travel agent. Been on many cruises, taken many, vacation experiences. Because back in the days, it was free for us. Sorry, or at least at a great discount. Everyone was trying to woo. Being a travel agent back in kind of the 80s, early 90s was a little like being like a high school sports recruit. Everyone was willing to throw stuff at you in the hopes that, you'll push to a carnival cruise or go to, the Lowe's, send people to the Lowe's or send people to this, that. So everyone was, throwing stuff at us. And I've always been a fan of the concept of cruise, even if it's not particularly something for me. I can certainly see the appeal of the thought-free vacation. Like, I'm just gonna get on a boat, and they're gonna take me places. They're gonna feed me. At one point, I'm gonna dress up and have the captain's dinner. I'm gonna have baked Alaska at some point. There will be excursions if I want to go. Like parasailing through Uruguay. The hassle-free, as someone who's had some very hassled vacations, I understand the thought of the hassle-free, but it wasn't until the last couple of days I realized how kind of shady some of these cruise ships are. Once they're 12 miles out, you're basically living Blackbeard's fantasy. Outside of U.S. territorial waters, there's not a whole lot they can't do. But hearing the stories of some of these cruise ship workers who, you're working 7 days a week, shifts to be determined, not always at a great rate of pay. I mean, some of these guys walk away with, I think it was once that, he averaged about £2 per hour in pay. And you're not always dealing with the nicest of clientele, something about the ugly American syndrome. But, a lot of bad stuff happens on these ships. And generally the first response of these cruise lines is, what problem? I don't know what you're talking about. Even going to the point of stonewalling, real official investigations into assaults and missing persons. And I never realized there were so many websites dedicated to cruise horror stories. But it seems like it's a real case of you get what you pay for, and in spite of the Kathy Lee Gifford commercials. Carnival is kind of the Walmart of the sea. So if you're willing to hang out in a Walmart, locked in for the most part, for the better part of a week, if that is something that appeals to you, then, by all means, have a good time. But yikes. And then the case of, the Carnival poop ship, when they can't cover it up, when they have no choice. But to deal with it. And I feel it was so bad for these people. I mean, not only, you spent, days in our libertarian paradise, a.k.a. poop ship. Now we're going to put you on a bus to Galveston. Or the people who wanted a hotel. They docked them in Mobile, Alabama. But Carnival said, no, we're going to take you to New Orleans. So you're going to have to go sit on this bus. We're going to take you to New Orleans rather than the hotel room that, would just be down the street. Torture. Bad times. All right. In more probably pressing news, it looks like through all the sound and the fury, Democrats and Republicans, at least in the Senate, look like they've come to middle ground, or at least a consensus on what gun legislation is going to be like. And in spite of the huffing and the puffing, the conspiracy theories and the bloviating, it looks like pretty much what I told you a couple weeks ago. Universal background checks. That's what's going through. And Republicans are finding the one holdup to getting a deal done is their fellow Republicans, who kind of can't stop lying about this. In this case, universal background check seems to be a done deal. The holdups now are exemptions, such as sales among family members, and where Democrats seem to have given is any sort of gun registry. Right now, as things stand, the law specifically forbids any sort of gun owner registry, any transfer paper trail is destroyed within 24 hours. Democrats seem to have, this is the ground that they've given, is that there won't be a database, but you still have to make sure that we're not leaving, like gun show loopholes or Craigslist loopholes open. What?
Craigslist doesn't allow the sale of guns.
E-band, whatever loophole, will be found. This is Greg Sargent in the Washington Post today. To put it bluntly, the problem faced by Republicans inclined to support an expanded background check is that GOP lawmakers such as Orrin Hatch and Mitch McConnell, who don't want to support this policy, continue to misrepresent it, falsely claiming it would create a national gun registry, because this convinces a lot of folks on the right that such an outcome is possible. Republicans inclined to support the proposal face major blowback. And so the four lawmakers, this is one of those groups of 8, again, are debating ways to add additional safeguards. So the key point that everyone should understand is that Democrats and gun control groups very likely will accept the exemptions and safeguards, and that will probably end up in the bill. The main goal of Dems and the left is solely to expand the background check system to include virtually all private sales within the law's current framework. Explicitly guards against the creation of any gun registry. There's still, again, I think, too much perception of NRA actual political power in Washington, even though the evidence doesn't back that up. In fact, and this is an absolute new twist, Bloomberg PAC, I don't know what the official name is, but the governor or the mayor of New York has started his own political action committee. And in this case, he is going after Democrats who have pandered to get that A rating from the NRA. And his first test case is in Illinois. They've backed their first, progressive candidate against an NRA panderer. I guess luckily for Leonard Boswell, this is never an issue he's going to have to deal with. But I think he should be seen as a cautionary tale. I think one of the key problems with the Boswell campaign is, he, in all likelihood, valued that, for whatever reason, that NRA endorsement over me. Not just me personally, but the Democratic base. And the one thing almost consistent, there was very little enthusiasm about a Boswell campaign. And I had said for going on 2 years now that I had no use for Leonard Boswell for a variety of issues. But maybe the kicker was When Republicans were in their Fast and Furious, when Fast and Furious was the outrage of the day, and the House decided to try to string up Eric Holder, as soon as the NRA announced that they would be scoring that vote towards, their NRA scorecard. You know which way Leonard Boswell was going to go. He was going to go with the Republicans, and he did. And this was a case. And then I had people come to me and say, what the hell is this? So, again, pointing out the nakedness of the NRA as a lobbying organization who runs up the score in competitive races, but still pressures, small-minded Democrats to pander to them. They don't change races. They don't really impact races. And for all the sound and the bluster, they don't even really represent gun owners anymore. They represent gun manufacturers. This is maybe the best long-term thing to come out of this reaction to Newtown, is that the NRA has pretty much been laid bare. They push for gun manufacturers, not gun owners, because you can have 70+% of NRA members say we are for universal background checks, and have the NRA still oppose it. It's bad for business. Their job is to sell as many, apparently crappy, but apparently expensive, Bushmaster guns with tactical stocks that, cause 100% markup. That's what they do. That seems to be why their solution to every single problem is more guns. Unless you're a South African para-athlete. Did you see that? The Blade Runner. Right? We were all, moved for a moment as we saw a South African sprinter, born with no, and I don't know how this works, but born without calf bones, Oscar Pistorius. All right, so his legs amputated at 11 months. Actually was an avid rugby player until he busted up his knee. Moved on to track and field. And said, I want to run, not in the Paralympics, I want to run in the Olympics. And after a bunch of rigmarole and concern over what do you have an unfair advantage? Because, in athletics, the handicap guy is really the one. But the unfair ended up running in the Olympics. Inspiring story until yesterday when he blew his girlfriend away. Now, to be fair to gun advocates, thanks to his gun, no bad guy will ever be able to hurt her. So, in one sense, they're right. On the other, again, just shows when you bring a gun in the house, it is far, far, far more likely to be used intentionally or unintentionally against someone living in that house than any, bad guy, both real and imagined. What was the study they did a couple months ago? Well over half of kids, who find a gun, pull the trigger, showing it off with their friends, or playing cops and robbers, cowboy and Indian, whatever. Well more than half pull the trigger at some point. That's the weird thing about this debate. again, when you argue for background checks and trigger locks and stuff, keeping guns and ammo separate, keeping them locked up. It's not my kids I'm worried about. I have no need or desire to have a gun in my house. It's other folks. So looks background checks are coming. Once you get past, and at this point, God, you're almost seeing Republican obstruction just for the sake of obstruction, even if it doesn't change anything. Look at the filibustering yesterday of Chuck Hagel, who will get in 10, 12 days. But we're just, at this point throwing a fit because, well, it's the only thing we know how to do on the right. It's the only thing they've got reacting to a world that is quickly leaving them behind. It'll be really interesting to see how that the Rand Paul versus the rest of the GOP, or that Tea Party versus the GOP, how that dynamic plays out. 2014 will be very interesting as far as House races, and even here in the state of Iowa. Where we got news today, Tom Vilsack announced he is not interested in running. He won't be running for Tom Harkin's seat. And this is what I told you a couple weeks ago, that Bruce Braley was already both in D.C. and here in Iowa looking to clear the field. Making sure that it's not going to be any sort of bruising primary experience to keep Harkin's seat. And I think there would be a lot of pressure on anyone looking to primary Bruce Braley for the very simple reason that the map is not favorable to us. Now, it wasn't favorable to us this year, and we saw how things turned out. But the 2014 map is skewed towards Democratic defense because it's the second election for that class of 2008. The folks who rode the Obama coattails in now are running for re-election. Certainly doesn't help matters when a Tom Harkin decides to step down. So that's going to be a key defense for Democrats. And it looks like Republicans are going to do their best to help us hold the seat. Poll after poll shows if Steve King runs, Steve King wins the Republican primary. Can Steve King win a statewide election? As hilarious as that would be to see, I wonder if you bring in noted native Iowan Michelle Bachmann to stump with him. I hope so. Tom Latham is by far the more electable candidate. Is he likely to win? I don't think so. Kind of milquetoast. Really just, the only remarkable thing about Tom Latham is that he's, good friends with John Boehner. One of the least popular speakers of the House in history, but you got to have something to hang your hat on. So he's far more, he's the better general election candidate that would not survive a primary with Steve King. Now the question is, will Steve King run? If he's smart, he won't. Don't underestimate the power of ego, though. Plus, funny thing, you read some of the, pregame State of the Union. Some of the biggest celebrities at the State of the Union, one of the biggest was Joe Donnelly, and he was a House member who won against Richard Murdoch in November and was seen, as the conquering hero. Like, you've moved up in the world. I have a hard time believing Steve King is not aware of that concept. And I whatever you think about Steve King, whatever you believe his policies and practices, he likes to talk. And the Senate is a chamber that is known for its talkers. Occasionally, like Chuck Grassley, they bring visual aids, something Steve King has experience in. Would he challenge Latham? Again, if he's smart, he's going to sit where he's at, where he's pretty much got, again, a safe seat till at least 2020. We'll see where redistricting takes us in 2022. But, again, ambition does weird things to some people. Would he run? Would Karl Rove and friends pushing against him be enough to say, bleep you, Jobu, I do this myself? But at least we know Tom Vilsack is happy where he's at for now, so he won't be running for the Senate seat. If by some chance Braley were to lose, though, yeah, I think one of the Vilsacks, and even if Braley wins, you probably will see a Vilsack take on a Grassley. Which one remains to be seen in 2016. Just a hunch. All right, 244-0077. Email radiobradshaw@gmail.com. And follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Radio Bradshaw. Don't have a ton of time, but I wanted to talk about this story about Tesla Motors. And I do this just because I loved the band back in the day. Tesla Motors versus the New York Times. And while it's latest, it's certainly not the first example of this. John Broder is a writer for the New York Times. Decided to do a piece on one of the new Tesla Model S's. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Tesla, more than just a dude about electricity and a great 80s hairband, they make electric cars. Now, in the past, it's just been electric sports cars, and they are all electric. Bobby Ewing's kid in Dallas drives one, and I hate myself for knowing that. They're expensive. I mean, I think we all could agree that electric car technology is not yet mature. It's in puberty. It's got a little bit of acne and is prone to lapses in concentration. But for the most part, it's getting there, and it has great potential. I was immediately reminded, as a fan of the British TV show Top Gear, and I'm not a real car guy, but I enjoy Top Gear because of the humorous elements. Last week they came to the U.S. and drove through the Southwest and had to race to Mexico. Maybe it was just leftover of my Cannonball Run love. But was it last year or the year before? They decided to do a piece on electric cars. And it was brutal. It was, for entertainment and comedic purposes, they were trashing electric cars. Oh, it ran out of gas. We had to push it. Couldn't get anywhere. Turns out, I think it was the folks at Nissan who have the Leaf, made the very smart decision to, when you're going to hand over one of these cars to a journalist for a review, you'd better, just for safety's sake, keep track of the telemetry. And so when Top Gear put out their piece, Nissan said, actually, what they did was incredibly dishonest, and here's how. They ran the thing down running circles in parking lots, and then came back and said, oh, this battery hasn't lasted, at all. Turns out, they were pretending it had a dead battery and pushing it while it still had charge. And the BBC had to defend the show. The folks at Tesla said, we literally found the script. They knew what the story was going to be before they even drove the cars. So the BBC had to just, kind of like doing the Vince McMahon wrestling. No, it's just entertainment. Defense. In this case, that one's going to be a harder play for the New York Times. And John Broder was going to drive a Tesla across kind of New England in cold weather and made a bunch of claims that turns out the folks at Tesla, who also keep the telemetry data, and far more than by just, speed, but as far as like they keep track of when what do you have the thermostat set to? Because all these, cars have a black box. The piece in the New York Times was absolutely brutal. It talked about running out of energy and having to, get the thing towed, and how, the battery was losing power so fast he had to turn off the heat. And it turns out some of those claims were not exactly true. The CEO of Tesla Motors keeps a blog and posted some of the evidence. For example, the charge log shows the battery never actually ran out of power at any time. The final stretch of his trip was 61 miles. He disconnected the charge cable when the display stated 32 miles. It'd be like, if your gas gauge says you have a range of 25 miles, you have a 50-mile trip, would you just go? Cruise control was never set to 54. He claims that he had to set the cruise control low at 54 miles an hour. And at some point he went 45. Turns out he was doing 80 for a chunk of the trip. So at the point in time he claims to have turned the temperature down, he in fact turned the temperature up to 74 degrees Fahrenheit. They actually caught him at one point driving in circles for a half mile in a 100-space parking lot to run the battery down. Now, the writer claims that all this was done, in conjunction with Tesla to test it, kind of in a real-world circumstance, because we don't gas up our cars every day, which is kind of a apples and oranges discussion when it comes to electric cars, but it's not the first and not the last. Fair to say, hit piece on electric cars, and just one of those things you just have to keep in mind. While the New York Times, unless you're a right-wing conspiracy theorist, is generally seen as a paragon of journalism ethics. What journalism ethics means to you may not be the same as the folks at the New York Times, but that's neither here nor there. Turns out this writer, unbeknownst to Tesla, had already run a bunch of pieces slagging electric cars, very much pro, dead dinosaurs in the gas tank. Just goes to show you the influence that these industries have. Same way when you look at these institutes who put out a report showing that global warming isn't actually happening. Funny thing happens when you start to look at their funding, where it comes from, and how many of these oil companies like a BP or an Exxon dump millions into, same way Fox is always willing to hand you a job if you're a prominent Democrat willing to say bad things about Republicans. If you're willing to pimp out your PhD and say, good things about carbon dioxide, there is a lot of money in it for you. And it's not just the climate change deniers or the think of the benefits to the Gulf of having all that free oil in it. Sure, the shrimp are dying, but they have a great increased viscosity. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to break through that, unfortunately. Kind of goes back to what we started at the beginning of the show. Science education in this country is a bit lacking. I don't know. What would it cost to get a series of Bill Nye the Science Guy DVDs in every elementary school in this country? Better yet, Beekman's World. Bill Gates has to have that kind of cash laying around. But it's amazing. It's not just client science. They're making their way into car reviews now. It's definitely an uphill fight we have. All right. Email me, radiobradshaw@gmail.com, and follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/radiobradshaw. I am out next week. I will be, as they say, on assignment, literally in this case. Be very careful if you turn in at the same bat time, same bat channel on Monday. That's all I'm saying. There'll be some scary people here. Maybe for humor purpose. Who knows? But anyway, keep an eye on the Twitter, on the website, and I will keep you up to date. And we shall talk again soon. Like I said, the website, bradshawshow.com, Twitter feed, Radio Bradshaw, twitter.com/Radio Bradshaw. Let's stay in touch. And I will see you a week from Monday, somewhere. Here at the Bradshaw Show on Webcast One Live. Thank you for watching. See you then.
Did you close? Whoa! Did you close down? You're done? Did I miss the end of the show?
I have my headphones on. Why are you...
Did the liberalism stopped? Oh crap!
Hi, Mom.